Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Iran Program Senior Director, Behnam Taleblu, and Heritage Foundation Senior Fellow Retired Navy Captain Brent Sadler. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From Lisa Daftari for the Foreign Desk, quote, this gas shortage inside Iran is highly significant and exposes the regime's growing vulnerabilities across multiple fronts. From the defeats of Hezbollah and Hamas in their conflicts with Israel to the losses of the Houthis in Yemen and the collapse of the Syrian regime under Assad, we see a consistent erosion of the regime's influence. Behnam, is the regime in Tehran in trouble?
Absolutely. The regime is in deep trouble. At home on the economic front, the rial, the Iranian currency, is at its lowest point relative to the U.S. dollar in its entire recorded history. The head of the Iranian central bank has talked about the energy crisis, has talked about the economic crisis, and linked it not to just domestic issues, but to geopolitical issues, the fall of their only state partner, the Assad regime in Syria, as well as developments vis-a-vis Israel, basically clipping the wings of all of its proxies in the region, and most importantly, of course, with the impending return of Donald Trump to the White House and the resumption of that maximum economic pressure campaign.
What would you say should be President-elect Trump's play when it comes to pressuring that regime?
Absolutely, the president should be doing two things, and they're both doable at the same time. One, maximum pressure against the regime, which means enforcement of oil sanctions, enforcement of sanctions and penalties against the regional trade network, underwritten by a strong deterrent posture that the Israelis are already helping us take in the Middle East, coupled with maximum support for the Iranian people. The Iranian people have been protesting against this regime in its entirety. They are the longest suffering victims of the Islamic Republic, and they are our key partners on the ground in the region for a fundamentally better Middle East.
All right, China, from former Trump National Security Advisor Robert OBrien.
I take it an American warfighter any day over a Chinese warfighter, but they're getting better, and they're closing the gap very quickly. And if we don't invest the way we need to in our armed forces, they're going to close the gap.
How concerned should we be about China's investment in its military, Brent?
Significantly, because what they're making up for in experience, they're able to build out with numbers of ships and aircraft and missiles. They've had a larger modern Navy since 2015, and now well over 370 ships that are being counted by the most recent Department of Defense annual report on China to our about 296 battle force ships.
As you know, the folks across the street at the United States Capitol can't agree on the sky being blue. So in terms of plussing up ships quickly, that's not a quick process for us, right?
No, when it comes to building ships, there's nothing that is more complex. Even the space shuttle doesn't come close to how complex building nuclear submarines is. And it takes 3 to 5 years to build one. But to be able to bring on new suppliers to build the parts, the pumps, and everything, you're talking 2 to 3 years. So we're already inside a window of maximum danger to turn things around and try to regain some semblance of conventional deterrence using our Navy against China, because they do count the missiles on our ships and they count the aircraft on our aircraft carriers that are in their neighborhood.
All right, let's talk about another huge conflict, which is Ukraine. There are questions about the next steps in the Ukraine war. Here's the incoming Special Envoy, General Keith Kellogg.
He understands the importance of this. He understands the importance of the relations he's got with his allies and also with Vladimir Putin as well. And he's the man who can bring this to a conclusion, and I really believe he will in a relatively near term.
Behnam, I know that Iran's your specialty, but do you have some thoughts on Ukraine?
No, absolutely. Given the Iran-Russia nexus, one reason the Russians are in the fight right now still, despite all the sanctions, despite all the transatlantic pressure, despite all the NATO pressure, is that the Iranians, the North Koreans, and others are really magnifying the Russian defense industrial base. So step number one for the Trump administration, if they really do desire peace through strength after January 2025, is to help handicap that Iran-Russia relationship. There's no country on the world that can lose against the Ayatollahs and win against a much stronger, tougher adversary against Putin. So a strong message of resolve means tackling this newfound axis of evil one link at a time.
Brent, can President-elect Trump end the Ukraine war quickly?
He can, if from a position of strength, acting from a position of strength, because Putin right now, his most recent statement was that he's willing to enter into negotiations if President Trump makes the first move. That's a trap. If we stand firm and say that Putin must honestly enter negotiations before inauguration, I think Putin will see that as Trump not being deterred and that Trump is willing to actually act on a position of strength, which is similar to what he did with North Korea, and it's similar to how he treated the Iranians. And so I think his deeds of his first administration, Putin is no fool. He knows what Trump can do.
Brent Sadler, Behnam Taleblu, gentlemen, thanks very much.